U.S. jobs are disappearing at the fastest January pace since the Great Recession. January was the worst start to a year for job cuts in the United States since 2009, with high-profile layoffs at UPS, Amazon, etc., fueling tumultuous beginnings to 2026 on the labor market. The 108,000 job cuts in January represent a 118% jump from the same period last year.
Yeah, and this is Trump's Labor Department reporting today that job openings in December dropped to their lowest level since the middle of the pandemic, since the heart of the COVID-19 pandemic, which we thought had to be the absolute basement when it came to job openings. It points out companies have cooled on hiring. You pointed out all of these layoffs. And not only that, there's almost no new jobs being created. The independent economic outfits that report on this, we haven't gotten the government report yet, suggest that there were barely any new jobs created at the beginning of this year. Not surprisingly, a new poll from the economist YouGov found that Trump is 14 percentage points underwater on what should have been a very strong issue for him, his handling of jobs and the economy. And he's even more underwater when it comes to inflation. This is just jobs and the economy, which he's been promoting as, booming economy, the new golden age. Well, the American people aren't buying it. And on top of that, we have a new survey from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, which found that consumer expectations have deteriorated, both with regard to wage growth and finding new work. In other words, consumers are very pessimistic about their wages, and they're very pessimistic about the idea of finding new work if they need a job. Who would have thought we'd be back to pandemic levels when it came to job opportunities in this country? It's such a sad commentary. And it's not surprising, in light of this, with the American people have their eyes on the economy, that Trump's approval rating in the latest PBS News Marist poll is down at 39%. And more to the point, what the poll found was those strongly disapproving of Trump were at 51%. They said this is the highest the Marist poll has seen in its polling since he started asking how strongly respondents approve or disapprove of presidents dating back to 2017. In other words, for nearly 10 years of asking this question of whether the American people strongly disapprove of a president, Trump's strongly disapproval ratings are the worst that they have ever seen. In some ways, that's even more indicative than his overall disapproval, which was somewhere around, I think, 59%. You can't mess up the economy and still maintain the support of the American people. No, but Trump showed me
he's jobs. He's the greatest job president who's ever existed, Dad.
That's what he said. I'm the greatest promoter of manufacturing. We've had a manufacturing boom when I'm president. What's the truth of that? What's happened to manufacturing jobs since Trump entered his second term?
You keep telling me it's not good.
They've been down just about every month. There's been a big net bleeding of manufacturing jobs during Trump's first year of his second term. Manufacturing job is being lost virtually every single month of the start of the Trump second term. But he still thinks he can lie through his teeth to the American people and somehow have us believe him. Well, he does have his true believers in his MAGA base, but beyond that MAGA base, people are not buying the stuff that Donald Trump is trying to tell us. He's like the Wizard of Oz, Sam, this big phony spouting hot air behind a curtain, and it's all empty. And by the way, just addressed the National Prayer Breakfast and kept spouting all of his lies still. After all this time about 2020, how he not only won, he won big. Won by a landslide in 2020. The only reason he lost was because the Democrats stole the election. I hate it when the media says he says this without evidence. No, he says this contrary to all the evidence, including the 60 court cases he lost when he had an opportunity to put his money where his mouth was. When he had to present proof, he fell flat on his face.
I saw a recent headline too that said that the Trump administration is looking to reclassify 50,000 government employees so they can fire them more easily.
Yeah, it's a travesty. This billionaire firing ordinary people who need the jobs, to feed their families, keep a roof over their head, get their health insurance. And this billionaire who seems to revel in cruelty for no good cause. He's not firing these people for cause. He's firing them. And as we pointed out so many times, they haven't saved a penny with all these firings. The deficit keeps going up and up. And when you fire people, some claim unemployment insurance. They're not contributing to the economy. They're not paying taxes. It ripples through the whole family. It's a disaster for the economy and for the deficit, but mostly for the individuals who he seems to care absolutely nothing about. Meanwhile, there are stories that since he's become president, his schemes have made him richer by $1.5 billion. He just sued himself. Get this, Sam. He sued himself, sued the IRS, which he controls, for $10 billion for leaking elements of his tax returns that he promised anyway to release to the American people and never released. He sued, I think, his own Justice Department, something on the order of $200 million for their investigation into the 2016 election. The grift never, ever stops.